So welcome to the financial intelligence session for today. This is a session that we hold on a weekly basis via Zoom. This is not about getting rich quick overnight, but instilling in you the skills, information, and education to build lifetime wealth that can be passed on to your children and grandchildren. I want to welcome every members of our groups to the session today. If you're joining us for the first time, you're awesomely welcome as well. We encourage you to join each session every week and do watch our previous recordings, as each session are always a powerful one you cannot afford to miss. Make sure to invite your friends and families along next time. Before we dive into today's session, if you're yet to watch the session we had last week, please try and watch after this session. It is uploaded on our YouTube channel. Before we go, we're going to do a quick recap on what we discussed last week. In our previous session, we talked about transitioning internally from one quadrant to another, and that is becoming who you are, right? Because you're going to become somebody else once you transition from one quadrant to another. So we talked about becoming who you are. For so many people, the main challenge is the changes they go through and who they become in the process. You know, remember we talked about the caterpillar to the butterfly story in one of the sessions that we had. So this is basically the changes, right? Because people go through a lot of changes when you're changing from one quadrant to another. And some people might find it like easy, you know, it might be an easy process for some people, while some will find it as a daunting task and impossible to achieve. We also talked about how money is addictive, and a lot of people do not understand delayed gratification. And if we want to look at this from a different perspective, for example, when someone with an employee mindset is in need of money, they look for a job because that's the mindset that they carry. When someone with a self-employed mindset is in need of money, they do something alone depending on their skill sets, you know, and some people it could be buying and selling, and for some people it could be a photographer, it could be anything, right? So based on their skill set, like a self-employed person, if they need money, they will think about doing something alone. When someone with a business owner's mindset is in need of money, they create a system or buy an existing system like a franchise that will produce money for them. And when someone with an investor mindset is in need of money, they look for an avenue to invest in assets, and that obviously will in return give money, or let's say put money in their pocket, right? Remember how we're all different at our core values. We talked already about this in previous sessions, so you can check them out on our YouTube channel. We also talked about how it's more risky on the left side of the quadrant compared to how many things about seeking a job security on this side of the quadrant, right? Most job demands, and today, right now, most job demands that you constantly gain more skills due to the constant changes in technologies. You also need to be constantly trained in these new technologies in order to keep up with the world of job seekers, right? Because a lot of people are looking for a job. So you got to be constantly trained in these new technologies if you really want to keep up. Not to even think about the high unemployment rate in the world right now. You can easily spend the money that, you know, like all this money, you can easily spend this to upskill yourself on educating yourself on the skills required for you to transition from the left side to the right side of the quadrant. Like we say in one of our sessions on Sunday, there is an untapped gift that lies within you, like a skill, a talent that the world is yearning for. You may never tap into this if you don't take the leap today. And it is more safe and secure on the right side of the quadrant compared to how people on the left side of the quadrant perceived the right side of the quadrant to be, right? You see, if you have a very good business systems bringing money for you, with you having to do little to no work, then you can ask yourself, why do you need a job, right? or why do you have to worry about job security? And the cool thing is, if you need more money, you can expand your business and make more money, right? This and many more were talked about in the previous session that we had last week. So I want to encourage you to watch the full video on YouTube. As usual, just before I start the sessions, I like to pull up this quote, and one of them is, pay off your debt first. Freedom from debt is worth more than any amount you can earn. Wow. And we're going to talk about this towards the end of the session today. We're going to talk about, paying off your debts and the strategies you can start using towards that. And I know this is probably applicable to most people in this part of the world where they depend on credit cards and mortgages and debts, but I think it's still going to be a useful things to have in your arsenal just in case you need it, right? So once again, I'm going to repeat that quote. Pay off your debt first. Freedom from debt is worth more than any amount you can earn. That's awesome. And the second quote we have here is, financial freedom is available to those who learn about it and work for it. Wow. So if you really want to be financially free, then you got to learn about it, right? And then you got to work for it. There's no such thing as something for nothing. You gotta offer something, right? You can't just do nothing and in return expect something. So this is another powerful one. So I'm gonna get going here. So today we want to continue from where we left off last week. As a reminder, we're on a journey and it's important to pay attention to these things. The end goal is to help you to learn how you can become financially free, how you can convert your cash or labor into assets that will in return put money back in your pocket even while you're sleeping. Isn't that awesome? What I will be talking about in this series, and what I've always been talking about in this series, is derived from the book Cashflow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. This is probably one of the best books out there about financial intelligence and financial literacy. And as usual, I just put a disclaimer. I just have to say this disclaimer as well. I am not an affiliate of the author of the book. I'm only using what I have learned and put into practice in this book as a guide, and I'm not claiming to be a qualified teacher or associate of the author. But after saying that, I do recommend the book to anyone looking to learn more about financial intelligence. So we want to start talking about how to transition to a successful business owner and investor, okay? You will need to learn how to take things slowly and get rid of the get rich quick scheme ideas, because a lot of people have it, like a lot of people see all these flashy things around them. And in all fairness, you never know how people got their wealth. But the truth is, some people have actually been at it for so many years. Like some people have been working towards their financial freedom for so many years that you never knew their pain, but all you can see is their glory. And that glory and success comes out within a very short period of time. And then people want to be like them in a very short period of time. Well, obviously, we also know that there are people that do shady stuff and things like that, but obviously you don't want to be like anyone who's in that category, right? You want to be different. Obviously, if you want to be clean, if you want to remain clean, so in that case you will need to learn how to take things slowly and get rid of the get rich quick schemes, all those ideas, right? You will need to start educating yourself. Okay, you need to start educating yourself on investing. It's very important. While playing the cash flow board game a couple of weeks ago, you saw a few things, and you can start practicing this gradually in reality while you get yourself educated as well. The transition from being an employee or self-employed to a business owner or an investor is beyond mental learning. It entails emotional learning as well. So in the process, you will have to be kind to yourself and don't beat yourself up, because you gotta understand that you will be learning. It's emotional learning as well. And for so many people, they get overwhelmed, they beat themselves up, it is important that you have to be kind to yourself. And obviously, after taking it slowly for a few months to a year, then you want to take it up a notch. You want to go to the next level. Basically, what it is that you start by crawling first, then walking and running, right? For example, the author of the book used this example. How do you eat an elephant? Yeah, if you have a whole elephant in front of you right now, that's huge, right? That's a lot of meat to consume. So how do you eat an elephant? And what he said is, well, you start by eating one bite at a time, right? Until you finish everything, right? So you start by eating one bite at a time. And that is the way it is now with with what we're doing. So you want to start by crawling, then walking and running. It's not, you're not gonna run on the first day, but you will get there eventually. I have said this a million times. There is no magic about it. Taking action beats inaction. In school, we were discouraged from making mistakes. This is why millions of highly educated people in the world today, they are trampled by emotional fear of making mistakes. The thing is, complete learning requires mental, physical, and emotional learning. And that is why actions always beat inaction. Studies conducted on people born into poverty that later became wealthy in their life, the study revealed that regardless of where these people are located on earth, they have three qualities in common. They have long-term vision and plan. So these are things that we want to start taking notes, because we're now talking about how we can become business owners, like how you can become an investor, right? So, and studies reveal that some people that they were born into poverty, because some people are actually not some people, a lot of people are self-made millionaires, okay? So these people, they have three qualities in common, and that is long-term vision and plan. They believe in delayed gratification. Remember, I talked about delayed gratification, guys. These people believe in delayed gratification. They don't believe in getting rich quick overnight, like you do something today and then tomorrow you want to become a millionaire. It doesn't work that way, folks. And they use the power of compounding in their favor. Like a lot of people understand what it means to compound their interest, or whatever they do, they understand how to use the power of compounding in their favor. While studies also show that there are many rich families who lost most of their wealth after only the third generation, guys. People in this category, they have these things in common. They have short-term vision. They're short-sighted. Everything about them is short-term. They don't have a long-term vision, so they just have a short-term vision. They have a desire for immediate gratification. You can see it's just exactly the opposite of what people, self-made millionaires, even people that were born into poverty, these guys are doing exactly the opposite of that. They have a desire for immediate gratification. I've seen people, they make money and they put all the money they made into like a brand new car, just to show people that, yeah, they have arrived, right? So you can see it's totally the opposite. And they abuse the power of compounding as well. Wow. Remember how I always talked about financial intelligence and literacy knowledge needs to be passed on to your children and grandchildren. You need to learn how to dream big. You need to learn, again, how to think long term, and understand that tiny drops of water makes a mighty ocean. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to be a tiny, the little things that you do today will become big tomorrow. But you have to start from the bottom and walk your way up. This is the solution to having long-term success and fundamentals when you're transitioning from the left side of the quadrant to the right side of the quadrant. Now, this is a question to you. Have you figured out what you want your future to look like? And let's study this simple financial statement and see what we're talking about here. You might have a lot of expenses today. At the moment, you might have a lot of expenses, but you can plan to have an asset in the future, right? So in the future, you can plan to have an asset and let your liabilities be in the past. This is saying that have you figured out what you want your future to be like? So at the moment, you might have, like a lot of expenses. Probably presently, you have a lot of expenses, but maybe you can plan to have a lot of assets in the future and in the near future and let your liabilities be in your past. So what you want to do is you want to try to keep things simple for yourself. A lot of people make this mistake. They run another man's race. Like you see a lot of people, they try to copy other people, and that is so wrong. So you got to remember that you're not in a competition with anyone. So try to be a better version of yourself every day and compete with yourself only. People without cash flow generating assets are likely to face a future of struggle and stress. So we're going to have a look at the poor, the average, and the rich cash flow patterns in the next slides. For example, this is the poor cash flow. The poor makes an income and spends it, and they have nothing left. They have no asset whatsoever that can generate money back into their pocket. And the average in the society cash flow pattern, sometimes people believe these are smart people because most times they have high paying jobs, they have nice cars, nice houses, and so on like that. A lot of people dream to be in this category. What these people do is they make an income from a high paying job and they acquire all these liabilities, and that makes them appear to other people as rich, right? Yes, they have a nice house, they have expensive cars, but these are on loan, right? They have big houses. It's on mortgage. They go on, lovely vacations. It's on loan. They pay lots of taxes. They've got credit cards. They've got lines of credit and so on like that. So they acquire all of these, and as a return, it makes them appear to others as being rich. Like people think they're rich, and a lot of people in the society, they want to be like that. And as a result, they end up with a hefty expenses. Their expenses literally cancels out their income due to their spending and money habits. Money keeps coming out of their pocket, right, guys? And let's look at the rich, cash flow pattern. This is so simple and less complicated. Basically, they simply acquire lots of assets. For example, rental income, royalty income, portfolio income, businesses, and so on like that. And this in return would put money back into their pocket. So simple. There's nothing complicated about it, at all. In the information age, the faster you develop your financial and emotional intelligence, the faster you become financially free. The world is fast changing, and the unemployment rate is also skyrocketing at the same time, especially with the adoption of AI, right? Like in some parts of the world, AI stands for artificial intelligence, and that's literally taking away the jobs from most people right now. It can only make sense for you to learn how to see the world from the business owner and the investor quadrant, and not from an employee and a self-employed quadrant, standpoint. The cash flow pattern of the rich actually makes sense. These things cannot be learned in school, and for most adults, it can be difficult because many have been conditioned to, think about hard work, and it's very easy for them to seek for unemployment when they feel the need to survive, or if they need money, right? It's always like many adults are locked into that. They feel about working at, that's the way many people have been conditioned. But when you look at the cash flow pattern of the rich, it actually makes sense. Then we want to talk about minding your own business, not the way you probably think about anyway. When looking at many people in the society, is like when you look at their balance sheet, you can see how, many have been conditioned to mind others' business and neglect their own. They owe others but never build their own assets. That's what it means by minding your own business. If you want to mind your own business, you got to start building up your asset column. When you don't mind your business, then you work for people, and then you have a lot of liabilities, and you cut up with all these expenses that it keeps coming out of your pocket on a monthly basis. The author of the book recommends that you start by first fill out your own personal financial statement right now and see what it looks like. It is important to understand your financial status presently if you want to get somewhere tomorrow, in the future. And the first step is to take control of your life and learn to mind your own business. Secondly, you need to set financial goals. Set yourself a short-term and long-term financial goals. Short-term is where you want to be, let's say maybe in a year from now, which is really, like taking it slowly, but what you want to be in a year from now. This is the taking it slowly part of the journey, like your short-term goals, and, this will eventually take you to your long-term goals. And the long-term goals is where you want to be financially in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, and so on like that. It is important to be realistic with your goal settings as well. For your short-term financial goals, you can have something like, for example, you can say in 6 to 12 months, you want to reduce your debt to a certain amount. Obviously, if you don't have debt, then you could just do follow what I'm going to talk about in the next slides. But if you have debt, maybe your short-term goals would be, you want to reduce your debt to a certain amount in the next 6 to 12 months, hopefully. And at the same time, increase your cash flow from assets acquired or via passive income to a certain amount per month, and stuff like that. For your long-term goals, you can have something like in 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now, you want to increase your cash flow from assets that you have acquired to a certain amount per month. So what do I mean by that? So for example, you can say, in 5 years from now, I want to be making XYZ amount on my rental property, right? So you can have something like that. You can play around it and see what works best for you, but you should have a long-term goal, and then you can you can list whatever you want in your long-term goal. So make a list of few investments mediums that you'd love to have in your asset. For example, gold, silver, cryptos, maybe rental properties, maybe online real estate, maybe stocks, and maybe businesses, and so on like that. So you want to make a list of what you would love to have in your asset column, and these are the things that's going to be bringing money back into your pocket in like 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. You can also use your long-term goals to create your income statement and balance sheet and see what it looks like. You can just play around, like you can say, okay, in 5 years from now, I'm going to have a rental property, I'm going to have a business, I'm going to have stocks, I'm going to have cryptos. And then you can play around and say, okay, based on all these things that I've listed, this is hypothetically what I'm expecting to make back. You can play around and around that and see what it looks like for you. And that would also give you an idea of what maybe you want to add more to your asset columns, or maybe what you listed is good enough for you. And again, for example, you can list your desired assets that you would love to acquire, and like I said, the potential income you expect to generate from each asset. This is also a good form of having a vision board. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of vision board, but this is a good example of having a vision board. You can include your financial statement on your vision board, and then you can review on a daily basis. Then we're going to move on and talk about learning to take control of your cash flow. The society suffer from money problem because many were not taught about cash flow management. Though a lot of people, they thought about how to read and write, how to ride a bike, how to swim. People are taught so many things, but people are not taught about cash flow management. These are the things that baffles me. Like, we can learn so many things. Like, people learn how to fly a plane. Come on, guys. Flying a plane. People learn how to build a spaceship, but people are never taught how, about cash flow management. People are never taught about financial intelligence. People are never taught about financial literacy. And as explained in the previous sessions, your liabilities is an asset to another person. Like, if you find yourself in this category, like most people, their liabilities becomes an asset to another person. For example, if I loan money out to you, that becomes an asset because I'm going to make money as a form of interest. I'm going to make my money back, and I'm gonna put interest on the money that I loaned out to you, and I'm gonna make money back, right? If I have a rental property, it becomes an asset, and to the tenant, it becomes a liability because they have to pay from their pocket. So that it's a flip side of the financial statement, or like it is on the screen right now. And obviously we talked about this a couple of weeks ago as well. It is as good as saying that you are an employee of those lending to you. For example, like those people who lend you money to buy your house, like on a mortgage, car loan, credit cards, line of credit, student loans. It's more like you're an employee to these guys because you're paying them back, right? You're working to pay these guys back. You got to understand the difference between good and bad debt. Again, we talked about this in previous session. Whenever you're owing money to another person, you are, like I said in the previous slide, you are an employee of their money for the amount of time it takes you to pay it back. So anytime you owe money to another person, you're basically you're an employee of their money. How crazy is that? Because you keep working to pay back that amount that you hold this person, right? So, and until you pay it back, obviously, until the day you become debt free, you are like an employee to their money. So we want to talk about action steps to consider if you're serious about everything we've been talking about all of these things. I want to give a few action steps. So the first thing you want to do is you want to review your current financial statement, see what it looks like. And I know for most people in this part of the world, they probably have like debts and stuff like that. People in other parts of the world, they might not have as many credit cards or mortgages to pay, or all these things. But it is a good idea to review your current financial statement, then identify your current quadrant and which quadrant you'd like to start receiving income from in years to come. So for example, are you a self-employed person today? Are you an employee? You want to identify where you are, and then where would you like to be in the near future? Remember, we talked about your short-term and long-term goals. So in 3 years from now, in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, where would you like to be? Would you love to be a business owner? Would you love to be an investor? Identify all of these and write it out, put it on the paper so you can see what you're working towards, right? Also, you want to start your cash flow management plan, which is what we talked about in previous slides, like your short-term goals, and I'm going to explain further as well in very shortly. So you want to start your cash flow management plan as soon as possible, and this is a very important one. You want to learn to pay yourself first and invest these funds that you pay yourself. A lot of people, they work to pay bills and do all these things, and they pay themselves last. And for so many people, they have nothing left at the end of the month. And that's crazy. Like, people have nothing left for themselves to even pay themselves. That's crazy, guys. So you got to learn how to pay yourself first, and then you got to learn how, and then you got to invest these funds that you pay yourself first. Remember the quote earlier about paying off your debt and be free? The author recommends focusing on reducing your personal debt. The followings are simple, some simple and ready to apply tips for reducing and eliminating your personal debt. And the first tip that we're going to look at, if you have credit cards, like I said, for some people in this part of the world, they have credit cards. And I know like some people in some part of the world, you probably don't. But again, these are things that you can learn and put in your arsenal so you can, have the knowledge, right? So if you have credit cards with outstanding balances, then one thing you want to do is cut up all your credit cards and leave maybe one or two. Okay, so maybe you have 5 credit cards, but maybe you want to get rid of like 3 out of those and keep 1 or 2, maybe 1 or 2, right? And ensure to pay off any new charges you add to these 1 or 2 cards every month, and do not incur any further long-term debt as well. And second tip is, if possible, come up with extra amount every month. And this could be, it depends on wherever you're located in the world, but I just pull up random numbers for myself. So this could be like $200 or $300. This should be easy for you to do with the knowledge that you've gained so far, because right now you should have learned a lot of things that would help you to be able to come up with some amount of money on a monthly basis. Maybe you want to cut down on some expenses, right? And it's important to be able to come up with this something extra every month if you truly want to see yourself, your financial freedom dream to come true. If you want to see that come through, then it is important to do this on a monthly basis. And the tip number 3 is apply the additional amount that you came up with. I talked about coming up with an amount every month. So you want to apply the additional amount on a monthly basis to pay off one of your credit cards. Okay. So for example, you already put in aside, you're already putting away $200 just as an example on a monthly basis. So you want to start putting that $200 on your credit card. So you want to start paying off your credit cards. One of them, remember, you already reduce it, and it is just an example. So if you have only one credit card, then that's fine. So you can just do this on your one credit card. If you have only 2 credit cards and you want to keep both of them, then that's fine. Then you can do this on 2 of your credit cards. This will leave you paying the minimum plus the extra amount on the card. So if you have a credit card, you just put up the amount that you saved up on a monthly basis. You start paying off one of your credit cards faster, okay? So you put up a certain amount every month, and then you pay only the minimum amount due on all other credit cards for now, okay? Then tip number 4, so once you've paid off the first credit card, rinse and repeat the same process on paying off your second credit card. Continue this process with all your credit cards, like I said, and the other consumers, such as your store charges. Obviously, this is once you have paid off the first credit card. Rinse and repeat, the same process on paying off your second credit card. You just do the same thing. Continue this process with all your credit cards and other consumer credit, such as store cards, So you repeat the same thing, paying off your consumer credit cards, your store cards, and so on like that. And then keep rinsing and repeating this process with your other debts until you fully pay them off. Then tip number 5, once you've paid off your credit cards and other consumer debt, repeat same process with other debts like your car loans and your mortgages. And if you don't have a car loan and your mortgages, then you're going to wait until the next slide that I'm going to pull up, because that's probably what you need. So if you're listening to this right now and you're debt free, you don't have any mortgages or car loans or credit cards or anything like that, then you want to wait for the next slide, because that's probably where you want to start off, right? But what I've been talking about is for people who actually have debts and mortgages and credit cards and loans and stuff like that. So once you paid off your, this is tip number 5. Once you've paid off your credit cards and other consumer debts, you want to repeat the same process with other debts like your car loans, your mortgages, and so on. This process helps to reduce the number of years you will become debt-free. So very important to know that. And then we want to talk about tip number 6. When you become debt-free, then start taking the extra amount you put in, like remember you already came up with a certain amount on a monthly basis, which you were using to pay off your debts, right? But now you are debt-free. And basically, if you're someone that is already debt-free today, when you become debt-free, then you can start taking the extra amount that you keep putting aside on a monthly basis. You can start putting it into investments and start building your asset column, right? So if you're debt free, good luck. Congratulations to you, because you can start this right now at this little amount on a monthly basis. You can start putting it into investments, and then you can start building your asset column. As a reminder, financial literacy requires that you train your mind to see money and tell you where the cash flow, where the cash is flowing. For example, a car could be an asset just as much as it could also be a liability as well. Your house could be an asset, of course. This depends on the direction of the cash flow coming in. Well, what do I mean by that? If any of these are putting money into your pocket, then it's an asset. And if it's taking money out of your pocket, then it is a liability. Today, many educated have landed themselves in high financial risk due to their lack of financial intelligence. And what do I mean by that? Today, many people have taken out lots of loans and mortgages and all these debts. It's upon them just because they lack financial intelligence. And that is why having financial intelligence is very important. So you got to ask yourself these questions. What is risk? By your own definition, right? So how do you define risk? What is risk to you? And is it risky for you to depend on a salary? Yeah, I know, right? So you want to ask yourself, is it risky, for you to depend on a salary? And is it risky for you to, having to pay debts on a monthly basis? Like you have all these debts upon you and then you keep paying back on a monthly basis. Is that risky? Is it risky to own an asset that generates a monthly cash flow? You got to ask yourself these questions. And is it risky to invest in yourself and educate yourself on financial education? Is it risky to learn about different types of investments? So you got to ask yourself this question, guys. So, like having a salary, is it risky? Like paying debts on a monthly basis, is that risky? And this is what people on the left side of the quadrant do, right? They basically depend on a salary, they pay off their debts on a monthly basis. And people on the right side of the quadrant, they have assets that generate a monthly cash flow. Come on, guys. Is it easy? Sorry, is it risky? If you have all of these assets that generates cash flow, back to you on a monthly basis. So you got to ask yourself these questions, folks. And then we want to talk about action steps. We want to talk about the action steps that you should take away with you today. So trash out all irrelevant activities and commit to spend some hours every week to accomplish any of these that follows. So read about business online or in your local library or newspapers. Okay, you want to learn and read about business. This is going to start opening up your mind, and this is going to start bringing new ideas to you, right? So if you're someone that loves watching TV or news, maybe you've got to spare time there. Like you can start focusing on these things, right? The next one is you want to start listening to financial news online, or it could be offline as well. You want to subscribe to financial websites, magazines, and newsletters. You want to have a cash flow gathering, and then you want to play and practice with the cash flow game that I showed you for better understanding. You want to attend investment and financial education related webinars or seminars. And you want to seek after a mentor, if possible, on the journey to become financially free. So these are action steps. And, my recommendation is like commit yourself to any of these, right? If you have some spare hours in a week, you don't have to do everything, but you can commit yourself to maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, maybe four, maybe five, and maybe all, right? If you have the time to do all of them. So read about business online or in your local library or newspapers. Start listening to financial news online or offline. Subscribe to financial website, magazines, newsletters, etc. Have a cash flow gathering, like, have a mastermind group, play and practice the cash flow game, right? Which is the one that I showed you before, for better understanding and open up your mind to bigger ideas as well. Attend investment and financial education related webinars or seminars if possible. And again, this is an important one. Seek after a mentor if possible, on the journey to become financially free. I hope you have been able to take away with you one or two things from this session today. This is where we will pull the curtain on today's session. So that would be the end of today's session, folks. So if you have any question, you can reach out to me on WhatsApp. That's my WhatsApp number. And also, I want to encourage you to invite others to join in future sessions. And you can check out our YouTube channel. Thanks for being a part of this session today. So we will catch up next week. Have a good one, folks.